Hey everybody, welcome to today's webinar on early spring container gardening. We are just waiting for everybody to get logged in, so we're going to give it a couple of minutes. For those of you who are new, welcome. I'm Sally. Today we have Peg Bier with us, who is really one of our most experienced gardeners on the staff. Many of you know her from the Gardening Advisor. She does fabulous container garden demonstrations, among other things. So we're very glad to have her here today to talk about early spring gardens and really get spring kicked off with some flowers and color. For those of you who are unfamiliar with our presentation format, the way that this works is we can't see you or hear you. So if you have a question, look at your Zoom menu. You'll see a Q&A box. If you click on that, you can type your questions to me, and I'll be holding on to those for Peg until she's ready to take questions. If you have any issues during the class, feel free to send me a chat. You can send it through Q&A too. I monitor both, and I'll be happy to assist you. So Peg, one more note, we are recording today. So just know if you have to jump off early, we have the recording of the class available. You can email me. Peg, I'm ready. I can go and turn it over to you. I think that's about it. Thank you for being with us.
Well, thank you, Sally. It's nice to be able to chat with Sally before we get started. And good afternoon. And I am so pleased that you're with us talking about early spring container gardens. I teasingly say, but I think I really mean it, that we are the container capital of the world because we really do a lot with containers here. I would like to share with you some thinking about this early season planting of color. Coming out of winter, we're all starved for that color, and I'm no different than you are. And I'm very likely to put something in a little earlier than I should. Okay. So we're going to talk about how we deal with some of this spring color, as well as some of the things that we also have in the annual house right now that are not cool season things. For instance, geraniums. Geraniums can be taken out, in and out, and so forth, unless you plant them in the ground, which is not a good idea right now because they're not cold sensitive. So as we go through this program today, we're going to speak to those things that love cool weather, but coming out of a slightly heated greenhouse, they need to be what we call hardened off. Now, we've had some really nice weather, so you have to worry about that right now. For instance, let's talk about, before we get into some of the pictures and so forth, let's talk about sweet alyssum. It loves to grow cool, but it does not like a frost, okay? Petunias, amazingly, petunias grow well when it's cool, but they need to be adjusted to the outdoors before you plant them in the ground. And they don't like frost right now either. So we're going to talk about how you can deal with that sort of thing. Another one that's fantastic are snapdragons. It's amazing what these snapdragons can do for you in containers or in the ground. They will bloom for a very long time. They may slack up in the heat of summer and then come back in the fall. And sometimes they will live over the winter and continue to bloom the next year. That's a bonus if you get that, okay? But let's begin with a couple of the pictures so that we can get a little inspired, and then we'll talk as we go along. Why am I so fond of containers? Well, for one thing, they're very mobile. It's easy to move them around, and at this particular time of the year, if you've planted something in it that's not frost hardy, you can either bring it inside or you can cover it. And we'll talk more about covering as we get into the program. So mobility, being able to move them around is very important. This was a fun picture that I took when we were in Amsterdam, and they obviously lived on this boat. So that was their garden. Let's go to another one. Okay. All right. Okay. So this is a planter that is cold hardy. It has the tulips in it. It has violas. It has pansies. And I think that's candy tuft in there. Okay. Now, obviously, those petunias are going to go out of bloom, but the beauty is they can be lifted out of that pot and something else put in. And by that time, you can put in something that's probably less cold hardy. Let's say if you wanted to do a geranium or something like that. So these are the things that we're going to talk about as we go through here that like it cool, not necessarily frost. Okay. All right, this is going into my own garden. As we were chatting with Sally earlier, it has been an experimental garden for many, many years of doing the TV show and whatever, because that's where I am. And the wonderful thing is, because I do not have a gardener, and I love to work with all of these plants and to learn about what will these plants do, what can I depend upon, because I really would like whatever information I give to be as accurate as possible. So I actually plant these tulips in these containers in the fall and then overplant them with violas and pansies and a few of the other cold hardy things that I will show you. Um, I will reach for before we, yeah, that's good. Here is a wonderful one that you can put in now and it will take the cold, or you could have put it in the fall, or you put it in now and then go into the fall. You can continue to use it. It's a perennial. I'm very careful about the perennials that I put into containers. They have to have longevity. I cannot put one in that's only going to bloom for 2 weeks, because then I've got to take it out and plant it in the ground. That's all fun and good for somebody who has a lot of time and a lot of space. But this is one that can stay in those containers, and it will take sunshine or it will take sunshade. So it's very versatile. It is also a taller plant. Okay, let's talk for 1 second about some of the things that one could put with this. Now we're talking about sun or part shade, a minimum of 6 to 8 hours of sun. Okay, this one is pretty cool hardy, Snapdragon, and I like the color mix. Another one that's pretty cool hardy is Diasia. These two are definitely annuals. And the color is blending some oranges into reds. One could actually, and this one, once it's acclimated, will take some cold too. And this is a cordyline. You know, so many people use spikes, but I enjoy using the color of the cordyline. And so this is a color pickup for that sunny garden or part shade garden. Now, I'm talking about big containers here. I really like to garden in containers that are a minimum of 16 inches wide, because they will accommodate these plants. Plus, you don't have to water as much when the heat of summer comes along. And they need that space for their root systems to be. I'm not terribly into putting something in the bottom of a pot, trying to compromise on the amount of soil, potting soil that you're using either, because these plants need to send their roots down into that potting soil. There are so many new petunias on the market now, and I've tried several of them. And this crazy tunia, I tried it last year and it bloomed well into the fall. So look at that funny little thing. I think it's precious. And it blends so well with all the color tones that are here. If you chose to do so, and this is another one that likes the cool weather and will go well into the summer, particularly if after its first flush of bloom, if you trim it back, it will come back into bloom. This is Sweet Alyssum, and it's a multicolor pack, which picks up all the colors that are in this. If you planted this around the edge, it would be a spiller. Okay. You so often call thrillers, fillers, and spillers. Okay.
Peg, is that
So
perennial? Is that euphorbia?
this euphorbia is definitely the perennial in the
That's
crowd.
euphorbia. Okay, thank you. We had a few
The
people
rest,
here, so
the
I
rest
wasn't
of
sure.
them are annuals. Now you do have a handout that Sally has sent to all of you also, and I have tried to list most of the perennials and most of the annuals that I will be showing. So you do have that as a little bit of a reference. Okay, next one, honey. Okay, let's see what we come. All right, this is another one. Okay, but let's go from there. Okay. This is a little bit of a close-up. Let me speak to the fact about violas right now. I love pansies. I love to mix the pansies and the violas. But I can tell you that those violas will outperform just about anything you could grow. They bloom for a long period of time. They spill out of those containers, and the heat doesn't take them out quite as fast as it does the pansies. Okay. All right, this is something I want to share with you, that the golden colored flower is a kale. It was beautiful, beautiful bronzy in my containers, and they are beautiful right now. Then up from that comes all of these tiny yellow flowers, and it's spectacular. When you are trying to think about cabbage and kale, think about red boar kale. That's the one that goes through the winter. And there's another one that's a deep green that's absolutely beautiful, and it's the Tuscany. Okay. But kale will go through the winter most of the time, unless we have a really severe winter. And it is spectacular. When that finishes blooming, you take it out and you redo and you put in some of the summer plants. Okay. Now, this is another, I just wanted you to see the effect of that wonderful plant blooming. The tulips are about to go out of bloom. I will take them out of those containers, and by that time, I can put in the summer things. And the summer things will definitely be plants that attract the hummingbirds. Okay, let's shift to the back garden. This again is still my garden, okay? And as far as containers are concerned, don't omit beautiful shrubs. This is a Japanese maple. I lost that really huge oak tree. I think it was due to too much water. I'm getting some underground water, unfortunately, in my place, and I have lost a few things. You learn to accept that when you're a gardener. Things just happen. But I put this really large container on top of that stump and then transplanted this Japanese maple into it. Now, underneath that, and I will put some in this weekend, I have violas growing. Then I will add nasturtiums that are going to flow out of there. And it's always a beautiful point. So if you're looking for containers that will accommodate a shrub, you can always plant annuals at the edges of those shrubs, okay? And just to the one side of that little statue that's there is also a heuchera in a container. I have better luck with those in containers than I do in the ground. They're absolutely magnificent. and they'll take a fair amount of sun. I personally think that they are better with a little bit of shade in the afternoon. Okay. Now, let's get into these plants that will take cool weather and like cool weather, but not frost and deep cold. Okay. You see Diacia here, Nemesia. Both of those annuals will take, loves the cool weather. And with that is the Dianthus, our Sweet William, which is supposed to be an annual Dianthus, but actually it's much more than that for me. It continues to come back year after year for me in the ground, and it blooms for a long period of time. Fragrant also. And in the front of that is the Sweet Alyssum. So you've got fragrance there too, okay? Okay, another one is Carex and the Vavinka, and a fern with the pansies and the violas. And let's come back to me here, honey, okay, so that I can show you some of that. All right, we're talking about some of those things that, you know, I don't know that I brought up the Carex. Did I? I thought I did. I wanted to, oh, I did. I did indeed. These are some of the most valuable perennials that you could plant in a container or in the garden, okay? I love these in groupings, and it loves a part shade garden, both of these. This particular one, the Acorus, perennial Acorus, will give you a contrast of color and texture in your containers or in your garden, and it will take sun or shade. The Carex would prefer a little more shade in the heat of the afternoon. And this is just a baby. This will get much larger. It'll be of similar size to this particular plant that I have here, okay, the Acorus. So you've got a choice for sun or shade and a contrast that you can plant in with things. In fact, one could do this kind of thing together also, because the variegation complements each other. Okay? And it would grow together even though the euphorbia will take more sunshine. That is a good thing. Okay. All righty, we can continue with that. There now, you can also paint sticks if you want to. This looks kind of Eastery, and I actually painted these stems purple because I wanted to have it look very Eastery, and just stuck them into the pot. So that's just kind of the frivolous little things that you do. And it has the coral bells, the heuchera in it, which will just stay beautifully. This again would like a little bit of shade in the afternoon. It has the euphorbia and the Acorus along with the pansies. Now, when those pansies are finished in the heat of summer, replace them with another annual that loves the heat. And here's another version of that, but it's using another spiky type of grass, and there's Diacia in there with that and the euphorbia again. But you see all these blends that can be fun as early spring containers. And all you have to do when heat of summer hits is take that viola, pansy, or Diacia out and replace it with an annual that likes the summer heat. Okay, here's another one. I love fern, and they are really, really beautiful in containers and grow well in containers. This is a holly fern with a complementary color with the green of that heuchera coral bells. Both are perennials, again shown with pansies. So you see what pansies and violas, which are definitely cold hardy, they'll take the frost. Now, the pansies, the violas, the bulbs that we have outside in containers will all take the frost. The others Be prepared to cover them. And again, we will discuss how I cover these as we go along in the program or bring them in if the weather changes. Mother Nature serves us some curves now and then. We've had some absolutely beautiful weather, and I've really been out gardening, and I just thoroughly enjoyed it because the temperatures have been perfect. But it's still late March, and we could get frost. Okay, so we have to be prepared for it. We want to enjoy this color, have this color, but know what to do about it. Okay, here's another one with a different color heuchera with that beautiful thing spilling out of it, the euphorbia and a grass. Okay, good. Now let's shift gears again. Let's change to another part of my garden. One of my daughters-in-law says, Mammy, more things grow in your gravel than grow in my flower beds. And I said, yes, they kind of do. Those are the things that really like good drainage, and they have it there. And so I have a lot of various sedums, hens and chicks, and the late summer allium that's growing there. But I also have a lot of containers out there that are very interesting. And we get between the perennial and annual house, we get a lot of dwarf evergreens. They are beautiful. And that's something you can do at this time of the year. You can create containers with those and then tuck in a little color, the spring color, the violas, and some of these other things that we're talking about, or plant the sedums into it. And the next one I think has a close up. Here we go. The little dwarf hosta. This is a spruce and a tiny hemlock, and actually it could stand a little color in the front. Perhaps I should have put in a viola or two. But they're fun and they're interesting, and everybody enjoys these. So you could work on that kind of thing too at this time of the year when you're anxious to be outside and working in the garden. This one actually is taken here at the garden center. That is a dwarf Japanese maple. I don't know how long, I can't remember exactly how long that's been in that container, and it is a large one, but please stop by and have a look at it. It has no leaves on it right now, but boy, it's still interesting. And it has been in there for several years, and it has ground covers underneath that are just absolutely beautiful. So this is something for an early spring container. And then when the weather's right, you'll get all those leaves on that beautiful dwarf maple. And I have grown two or three of these in containers, and you saw the big one in a container. It's been in that container for years, and it's very happy. And this little baby is very happy, so I can highly recommend them. Okay, this is another container that has a lot of sedum. Now that has a lot of color. Doesn't have to be a flower. And these things will take the cold. You don't have to worry about them. And then they'll bloom later. This one actually was probably taken in May because some of the sedum are coming into bloom. But we have so many out there right now, and the color within those is just spectacular. All right, let's talk about another group of containers, which we will be talking about again soon. Okay, is herbs in containers. We have so many herbs out there. This is all around the stump of that beautiful Japanese maple that you saw earlier in a large container. I love the herbs to be near the back door because I use herbs a great deal in my cooking. I could not grow them near my back door until I lost that tree. And so you see, when you have a loss like that, you just make lemonade. And I got a lot of lemonade there. and I am enjoying it tremendously. You can tuck into that now within the week or so anyway, nasturtiums, which like it too. Later on, you can violas, pansies. You can garnish with loaves. They're actually edible. Marigolds are actually edible. I don't think I really like marigolds, but we do. We do munch on the leaves and the flowers of nasturtium. That's a pleasing fragrance to me. And so, if you're thinking about containers, grow herbs in containers. Okay. Is that, is that the last one? Okay. Let's talk about, we've discussed some of these things before we do the how to. I'm going to this myself. Okay. Let's talk about some of the things that um, are to be enjoyed right now, but they're not going to last forever. These daffodils won't stay in bloom forever. We know they're good for 2 or 3 weeks, and they've got buds coming on, so they will have some longevity. This hyacinth is so incredibly fragrant. Now, I put some of these things in the fall, but a lot of people didn't do that, okay? This, to me, would be potting up a living arrangement. Remember, containers are mobile. And so you can move this around as you wish. It can be enjoyed outside. If the weather is not good at night, it can be set inside. And it's fantastic Easter. It is an inexpensive arrangement. And when these bulbs are finished, you can take them out and let the little violas continue to grow. Fantastic. Now, there's back here a plant that everybody gets excited about. It's a ranunculus. It likes cool weather too, but not frost. It doesn't have a lot of longevity, but it is so beautiful. You are buying an arrangement that's going to last for several weeks. And this would be pretty in this kind of thing also. Okay. So you can treat yourself to what I call a living arrangement. And it will last for quite some time. But think of some of these things that are just beyond beautiful, strictly that way. I am buying an arrangement. It's going to be lovely for a long time, and it's going to be fun, and it's just going to make you feel good. Okay. So, containers. You want to have success with them. I am encouraging you to use a larger container. If you use small containers, you have to be prepared to maybe water twice a day in the heat of summer. And I can't do that unless I have just a few special things that are sitting on the deck that are easy to do, or that you're growing succulents or some of the things that don't require a much water. But generally speaking, I think the measurement of this, maybe 16 to 18 inches, that is a good size container to grow things in. Okay. Landscape fabric. We actually cut up long rows into small pieces so that people can use this stuff. And I put it over the drainage hose on the bottom. Why do I do that? More than anything, to keep the soil inside and keep some of the little buggies on the outside. So first goes the landscape fabric. And then I use a good potting soil. Merrifield has a very good potting soil. Espoma has a good potting soil. Fox Farm there's a number of really good potting soils. And so then I fill that pot to, let's say, to the ridge, if you can see that ridge, several inches down. I fill it with this good potting soil. And then into that, I like to use Plantone. This is an Plantone, garden tone, flower tone. They're all very similar and they're all organic. And I put a good handful, probably half a cup, into that potting soil and really, really mix it in so that as those things grow down into it, they have that nourishment. Now, you may need at some point to add to that and put more of it in. There are also liquid things. There is a fish fertilizer that so many people say is fantastic. I'm going to try this in a couple of containers, not in all of them, because one of my neighbors has a lot of kitty cats, and I'm not sure whether they would like that or not. So okay, we have our container, we have our soil in it, we have some beginning fertilizer. If you don't want to go organic, then fertilize with Blossom Booster. It's so easy. And you'll have to do that periodically because as you water containers, you're washing out some of those nutrients. So you have to replace them. And you can start off with the organic and then add some of the organic if you choose. Or if you're not into organic, then this Blossom Booster is easy. Just follow your directions, okay? All works really well. Okay, after you have done all of this, then you select those plants that really look good together. And let's talk about a sunny one. There are some absolutely gorgeous Calabricoa, which is like a little petunia. Let's say, well, we'll put in a couple of those different tones, okay? I absolutely love, and again for sunshine, this is a sunny one. And you could do this now. Be prepared to cover it if the weather gets bad, because this is a perennial and it's going to trail out of the spot. These will complement it as it trails. This is a wonderful, wonderful sedum, okay? Colorful too. Let's see what goes with that. Another one that will take the cold. Again, not a flower, but it's a complementary foliage plant. So the gray modifies some of these things. Let's sit that down. And we're going to add a chorus, because I think we can fit all this. I'm going to shake some of the soil off. And a chorus we can fit in. And possibly you could also fit in this osteospermum, and there are different colors in this. And these all will like cool weather. You could fit that many plants in that container. Now, I like to hold my soil down from the top of that container at least an inch, because I'm going to add some small stones to the top of this. 3/8 inch stones. And we have small gravel out there in bags, several different kinds. Pea gravel, river rock, there's a red stone, 3/8 inch. I'm going to add at least a 1/2 inch of that stone to the soil on the top. That does several things. The squirrels don't like to dig into that. They will dig into fresh soil, and I have squirrels and I have people complain about squirrels digging into their containers. That is one way that I discourage it. But here's the bonus also of doing that. When I'm watering, the water stays in the pot. It doesn't wash out. That stone keeps it from washing out and making less. I'm not patient enough, and I have a few too many containers to go out and water with the watering can. I go out with a hose with my finger over it and water all these plants. And that stone on the top keeps that plant from splashing out, the soil from splashing out of that plant. So now, let me answer another question that I'm sure a lot of you have. And that is, Can you reuse the soil that is in your containers now? My answer to that is that I do frequently. But here's what I do. Because as the season progresses, this potting soil compresses, and some of that organic material is used up. When I replant in the spring or add to that, I use my trusty, and this is my absolute favorite, trowel to go in and loosen that soil all the way to the bottom. Really, really loosen that soil. And then I like to add at least 25% fresh soil plus my fertilizer before I plant. Let me go back to this. This is a lot. It may look like it's not easy to use, but it pries things beautifully, and I've used it for years, and it's American made. It's a Wilcox All Pro. Okay, so you get a coupon today, Sally. If they get a coupon, tell them to buy one of these. Perfect. Okay. So yes, the answer to that is I do reuse my soil. Now, I think I have covered things fairly thoroughly. I just, except for the covering, Sally, I want to make it very, very clear that there are a number of plants in the annual section currently that will not take frost. For those that we're talking about, these cool season things today, I have a roll here of Harvest Guard. And there's 2 or 3 different companies that makes this fabric. It's very lightweight. Light goes through it, and water goes through it. And so if you have a below 40 predicted, then wrap your containers with this fabric. You can tie it with a string. In my garden, out in the garden, now we're not talking about containers right now, I will put this over some plants that I may have already planted and stake it down with sod pins. In fact, as a reminder, all of my wonderful mop head hydrangeas, the beautiful blues that bloom a lot on last year's wood, I will cover, if it predicts frost, with this fabric and pin it down with sod pins. This is an invaluable product. You can reuse it. It's great in the spring, and then you can reuse it if you need to in the fall. So that's how I take care of them. Either you bring them in or you cover them. Now, if you don't have this, a lightweight sheet will certainly help. Don't use plastic because that plastic will burn wherever it touches, but any lightweight fabric. But this is just so versatile, and I do really, really like it. So plant a container that you know is going to stay a period of time in the house before you put it out. A lot of people want geraniums because we've got Palm Sunday coming up. We've got Easter coming up. They want that color. You see this color, you want this color, but you just have to take care of it. Okay. We'll take some questions, Sally.
Thank you, Peggy. Yeah, so we have a few questions. I'll start out with some questions about the products that people are asking. Can you name again the trowel that you were recommending?
I absolutely, this trowel is fantastic. You know, I only push the things I believe in. In all those years, those over 20 years of that television show, I never had to push anything that I didn't believe in. And so it's a Wilcox All Pro, and there are different sizes of them, and I actually have several of them. But this one is wonderful for prying. It's wonderful for working in containers or working in the ground. And I don't have as much strength as I used to have, So I love the leverage. Okay.
Thank
Yes.
you. Okay, so the next is the fabric that's called Harvest Guard, correct?
It's this one is Harvest
Harvest.
Guard,
Okay.
but there are other brands. Okay.
Do you know if that
It's
deters rabbits from getting into stuff? Rabbits?
this.
Yeah.
Well, it would, yeah, it would keep
Okay.
the rabbits from getting it. But we talked about a little bit earlier about deer. Some people now, low growing things particularly, will put some of the netting over like the pond netting or the deer netting and put it down with these sod staples. And it's not terribly visible. That will help with rabbits. But okay, I'm glad you asked that question. I use Bobex. Some people like to alternate liquid fence and Bobex. It smells to high heaven for 24 hours and then the odor goes away. But the deer do not like it. And when you use it according to the directions, it's fantastic. I wouldn't have a hosta if it were not for this product and a lot of the other things. Now, obviously, you're not going to put it on your herbs. You're not going to put it on anything you want to eat either. But there's also uh, Bobex makes one that is rabbit and deer repellent. Okay, so fortunately, I don't have to worry about rabbits because I've got two absolutely beautiful fox, and they're very good at keeping the rabbits away.
Thank you, Peg. All right, last product related question that we have right now is about the container you were holding. Is that
Yes,
that looks like it's maybe some kind of plastic? It's not like stone or ceramic or anything. It looks really
it,
lightweight.
this happens to be plastic. And we just got in some of these and we will soon have some out for sale. However, it was really easy for me to lift this,
Yeah.
because I do have a lot of terracotta. I'm very fond of terracotta, and it's the well-fired Italian and most of mine go through the winter. I keep them off the ground because they should never be on the ground in the wintertime. Never have a saucer underneath them in the wintertime. And I love the look of it. Okay. But plastic is fine too. Okay.
Thank
Yes,
you.
ma'am.
Yeah, we had a few people asking
Awesome.
about that. Yeah, I thought it looked
Lovely.
like it was plastic. Just wanted to make sure. Um,
Yes, it is.
those are good ones if you need to move them around a lot too. All right.
That's true.
Okay, here's the next question. Should you always use a container with a drainage hole?
Absolutely. Unless you're doing a water garden,
Okay.
it has to have drainage. Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so now we have some questions about plants. Um, so let me just scroll back up, and I just want to go ahead and apologize to everybody. Well, I don't know if I'm apologizing or not. We may have enough time to get through these questions. It depends on how many more come in. So just a reminder, if we don't get to your question, feel free to hit reply on that confirmation email or contact me directly if you have my email at this point because you've attended a lot of classes. That's fine. You can email me and we'll follow up with you. All right, so we had a lot of questions come in about bulbs. So I know you referenced when the bulbs are done, you pull them out of the container. Can you explain what that process is and what you do with the bulbs once you pull them out?
Well, hopefully you have someplace in a garden to replant them, okay? And even if they're green, which I usually take them out in when they're in containers in the green, you can immediately plant that out in the garden, and it will continue to grow and produce next year's bulbs. So there's no real waste there. I'm not as careful about tulips because, as you know, an awful lot of the tulips don't come back well anyway, but it's worth the chance if they're still in the green and they're going to grow. Plant them a little deeper than you might normally because people are saying they last better when they're planted more deeply. And I really believe that's true. Walking through my garden last evening, I'm amazed at how many of the tulips that are 2 years old are coming back. And I'm pleased. And I think planting them a little deeper than is recommended is helpful in that perspective.
So after you take the bulbs out, can you leave them in the ground? They'll overwinter in the ground?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. I would put them immediately back in the ground. I know there are people who say, dig these bulbs, la-di-da. Forget that. I'm never going to do that. Okay. Just go ahead and put them in the ground and hope for the best.
Thank you, Peg. All right, so when these containers are transitioning from season to season, some of the plants don't look so good. You want to replace it with a new plant. How do you do that without damaging the other plants in the same container?
You just go around it all the way around it and lift it up, take it out. If it's a perennial that you're not happy with, plant it in the ground, okay? And then put something fresh in. If it's the violas and some of the things that are not going to be there through the heat of summer, just do the same thing. Go in, we do it all the time out here. Go all the way around that little plant, scooch it out, and put the other one back in.
Thank you, Peg. All right, so here's our next question. So when you're planting a container that's really, really big, this person in particular wants to put maybe sunflowers in it, so it's going to have to be really large. Is there anything that you can put in the bottom, or do you have any tricks you recommend so that people can maybe put a little bit less soil in it so it doesn't weigh as much? It's easier to move around.
Well, if you're going for a really, really big container, it's not going to be easy to move around anyway. I have what I call a little truck that you scooch under and move those big things, and you'd be surprised what I can move around. I'm not big into recommending putting stuff in the bottom. People used to do peanuts. I'm not fond of peanuts at all. I don't think they're good for the environment. Some of them are made now to disintegrate, so it's not a good thing to put those in the bottom. I want to be sure I've got really good drainage. Some people think about putting Coke cans or whatever. We also do sell some little discs that you can. I would have a tendency to use that before the others. You can't use them in a container that is vase shaped, but yes, they're orangey, but you don't see that orange once it's in the container. You put those down on the bottom, and that can save with a really big container. Okay, so yes, you can do that.
Thanks, Peg. All right, next question is so this person is putting annuals in containers. How often do you recommend changing out the soil um, in those containers?
Well, we'll speak to that again because it's very important, and I have many questions about that. As long as everything is healthy in that and it doesn't transfer some sort of disease, and I'm thinking first of blights, perhaps with tomatoes. You wouldn't want to plant tomato in the same container for more than 2 years because they tell us that blights can be in the soil at that point in the game. Except for that, I reuse my soil, but you must loosen that soil and work a little fresh soil in to loosen that soil. Other than that, I reuse it because I have a lot of things. Yes.
Thank you, Peg. All right. Next question. We've got a few plant ID questions. So first, what is on your left directly the green that? What is that? Yes.
This one is a perennial.
Okay.
It is a sedum
Okay. I thought it was
angel
sedum.
Angelina,
Okay.
and it is a wonderful ground cover. It needs some sunshine, minimum of 6 hours. Okay, fantastic. Mine in my containers right now that have been in there for a couple of years and flow beautifully out of that pot have taken on a little bit of a bronzy winter look, and it's just beautiful. I saw it as I walked up the steps this morning, and I thought, should have taken a picture of that. But you just can't have a picture of everything.
Pictures of quite everything. Thank you. All right, next question is can you grow bleeding heart in a container at this time of year? Does it need to wait a little longer?
You can grow bleeding heart in a container, and there is a beautiful one. I want to call it gold heart that has golden foliage and the most beautiful deep pink arching blooms. That one has greater longevity for me. If you're growing it in a container, it's going to bloom heavily in the spring and then bloom a little off and on after that, and the foliage is going to stay up. Oftentimes, a lot of they'll die back in the summertime, so it, it's not the greatest thing. I showed one in the picture with that Japanese maple on top of that cut uh, stump of the tree. There was a huge one of that gold, I think it's gold heart, okay? It's golden anyway. And it's beautiful. And you can do that soon. I believe we have some in the garden now. That's a perennial.
Great,
Yes.
thank you. So we had a couple questions about the Japanese maples. I can't remember if you showed one or two, but we had a couple of people ask what varieties you recommend to plant in a container, like which ones work well.
Well, I'm not going to quote varieties because I can't remember what they are. But but we just got a wonderful, wonderful shipment of some of the dwarfer forms that do so well in containers. And right now there's a great selection of those, and I highly recommend them. Okay. I do have two or three growing at my house. There's two or three beautiful ones in our containers here. The big one that you saw is just your typical weeping Japanese maple, one of the lace leaves, okay? And that is a large one. But you trim it, you trim it back. It has been in that container, um, transferred from one to the other, the roots trimmed back somewhat, and believe me, I'd have some help doing that. But it's been there for 5 or 6 years.
That's great. Yeah, so
Oh, go for it.
anybody who is interested in a Japanese maple, like a dwarf variety, they should look for a dwarf variety and then they can ask at the store about some
Yes,
more
and
recommendations.
those dwarf varieties are actually showcased between the perennial and an annual house. Now I'm talking about fair oaks, okay?
Yep.
That's familiar with. And now's the time to do it because there's quite a selection out there at the moment.
Perfect. Excellent. And if you shop somewhere other than the Fair Oaks, or even if you shop at Fair Oaks, then you can ask when you arrive in, and I'm sure people will
Just ask,
to
yes.
direct
I
you.
just
Yeah.
I don't know where they're displaying them because I haven't been to Gainesville for a while and I don't know where they're located.
Definitely, yeah. All right, so we have a couple questions about protecting actually the containers during the winter. I've heard from a couple of people who've sent chats saying they had their containers damaged over the winter, and then they want to know how you protect yours.
Well, I pray a lot.
Well,
My Mexican pottery has not been fired well, and it will not winter over. Okay. The really well fired terracotta has wintered well for me. Unfortunately, this year I did lose one, but it was a very old container. It's well over 10 years old, and I'm disappointed, but it's been a good guy for me for a long time. The main thing is don't ever leave a saucer underneath. Saucers are wonderful in the heat of summer because they do help with the watering, but that's the only time you should use a saucer. Do not leave them because that moisture will go up into that container and it will crack every time. Do not leave them sitting on soil. If I'm staging a container out in the garden, which I do, I'm going to sit it on a piece of slate or I'm going to elevate it in some fashion. Okay. I've had amazing luck with some of the ceramic containers, but here again, never on wet soil, never where it'll be sitting where it's wet. And I've really lost very few. Call that luck? I don't know. Okay. But every now and then you'll lose one. It's just the way it is.
Thank you. And we had one question I just wanted to clarify. So this person asked if the harvest guard blanket or that I don't know if it's a blanket, that material, if
Well,
that's
we can
enough
call it
to
that.
protect a container during the winter if they want to leave it out for the full season, is that enough or is this more so for frost?
You know, if you want to protect that container over winter, and it isn't a bad idea, you know what I enjoy doing? Use some of the bubble wrap, attach that all the way around the container, and then we have burlap we sell by the roll, or we even have it at the loading dock to cover that for it to be attractive. Wrap it. You can put it in with side pins, the two things, and tie it with a string. Yes, that would definitely give you protection. Bubble wrap and wrap on top of that your burlap. You
Thanks,
can even
Meg.
put a bow on it if you want to.
All right, next question's about soil. Do you recommend the same soil for herbs, plants, and veggies in containers, or do you use different kinds depending on what's going into the container?
I don't really. I'll tell you one soil that I do enjoy for the herbs is Fox Farm. It's a very good one, but you know what? Our Merrifield is good, and the Espoma is organic, and that's a good soil. No, I don't. Not really. I use what I have.
Thanks, Peg. Um, let's see. Sorry, I'm checking to see what we've got here. Okay, so next question is do we still recommend products like Moisturizer? Do you know what that is?
You know, I promoted that for years, and it was fantastic. And even with our own Merrifield soil, I have stopped recommending that now because a lot of these companies picked up on that and began to add some of that to their soils. And I never know how much is in there. And you can definitely overdo that. And so I really stopped recommending it unless you know your soil really, really well. Or, it certainly wouldn't hurt to add some of that if you're growing the alocasia or the colocasia or some of the things that want moist soil. That is when you might do it. Now, I do know that it's not an organic product, so you are not going to find that in your Espoma organics. They're not going to include that in here because it's not organic. So you're just going to have to water it more often. Okay.
Thanks,
But
Peg.
that's my answer to that.
All right. Okay, next question is about tall containers that maybe can get a little top heavy. So this person has a Norfolk Island pine in a pot, and in strong wind, it's prone to blowing over. So have you ever experienced this, or do you have any recommendations to keep these plants that are a little bit more um, prone to catching the breeze?
I'm very, I'm very lucky that my house sits down from the road and it's kind of low and I don't have tremendously heavy. Well, everybody can have heavy winds now and then. If it's a really tall container, you could put some stones, some large stone in the bottom to make it heavier at the bottom. Other than that, you're just going to be kind of on your own. If it's on a deck, there's no way to secure it unless you lean it up against the deck. Yeah.
Thanks.
Or, you could put a piece of rebar if it has more than one drainage hole. But if you put the rebar down and into soil, you're closing up your drainage. So that wouldn't
Mhm.
work.
Oh
I
man,
try
yeah,
to
this person
figure,
says it's on a patio. So maybe send us some pictures or come into the plant clinic. We'll see.
well,
We
I,
could we could troubleshoot that one.
yeah, I think that needs some, but chances are her only hope would be heavy stones at the bottom.
Yeah, okay. Um, All right, let's see. So it's 1 o'clock now, Peg. So for everybody whose questions did not get answered, again, please feel free to contact me. You can hit the reply button on those confirmation emails. That's the easiest way to do it. And we can follow up with you. You're also welcome to call our stores, come in. We welcome you all to do any of those things. Peg, is there anything that you'd like to close us off with before we finish?
Just read through the little email that you have there, because it'll be reminders. It will tell you a few perennials that I'm particularly fond of that have longevity. It will tell you the ones for sun and the ones I like for shade. And it will mention some of the other things, but it'll reinforce also this: let's work with Mother Nature.
Thank you, Peg. All right.
Thank you for watching.
Thank you. And quick reminder to everybody, the survey will be coming out following this class. It's going to be a little bit later today because David Yost is going to be speaking on vegetable gardens this afternoon at 2. If you didn't know that and you're interested in attending, feel free to shoot me an email. Maybe just change the subject to vegetable gardens. So I know to send you that link in an hour. You can also go on our website and sign up. Thank you so much for joining us today, Peg. We're glad to have you, and everybody, thanks for joining us on this call. Have a good day.
You too.